You know what stings the most? It's not the public humiliation, not the cutting words. It's the realization that for 10 years, you've been living a carefully constructed lie. My name is Lucy Hayes, and on the night of our 10th wedding anniversary, my husband, Adrian Thorne, raised a crystal flute to toast our union. And then, with a smile that never reached his cold, calculating eyes, he uttered words that peeled back the veneer of my perfect life, exposing the rot beneath. To Lucy, he announced, his voice booming across the lavish ballroom of the Grand Regent Hotel in Manhattan, echoing off the gilded chandeliers and polished marble floors. Every eye in the room, filled with New York City's elite investment bankers, gallery owners, tech magnates, was on us. I stood beside him, a vision in emerald silk, my hand clasped in his, a faint, calculated smirk playing on my lips. My heart, however, was thundering like a trapped bird against my ribs. I knew what was coming. Then he delivered the blow, his voice dripping with disdain. From the very first day, you were repulsive to me. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Adrian, ever the master of shock and awe, paused, letting the words hang in the air, a poisonous miasma. He watched my face, expecting to see tears, humiliation, a collapse. But he found only that faint smirk. My heart pounded, yes, but not from fear, from exhilaration. The game, after a decade of silent torment, was finally afoot. With a subtle nod, I signaled the hotel's event manager, a man who, unbeknownst to Adrian, was a loyal beneficiary of my covert patronage. The grand ballroom lights dimmed, plunging the room into a dramatic twilight. A hush fell. Then, the immense projector screen behind the stage flickered to life. Adrian's smug confidence drained from his face, replaced by a mask of stunned horror as the images unfolded before him. His jaw went slack, his eyes wide and unlinking. The story I am about to tell is one of fiction, a testament to the quiet power that can bloom in the shadows of neglect and cruelty. To the outside world, Lucy and Adrian Thorne were the epitome of marital perfection. Adrian, a charismatic real estate mogul, his name synonymous with groundbreaking skyscrapers and multi-billion-dollar deals, commanded respect in every boardroom, from Midtown to the Hamptons. His presence was a gravitational force, drawing wealth and influence into his orbit. And I, Lucy, with my understated elegance and sharp intellect, was the ideal partner, always at his side, gracefully supporting his ventures, shining effortlessly at high society galas and exclusive charity auctions. Our sprawling penthouse atop a gleaming skyscraper in Tribeca, its sleek interiors adorned with cutting-edge modern art and bespoke furnishings, was a testament to our immense wealth. Our daughter, Clara, a radiant 10-year-old gifted with both beauty and intelligence, was the darling of our exclusive social circle. To onlookers, our life was a glittering fairy tale, wrapped in a golden veneer of prosperity and harmony. But beneath this polished exterior lurked a darker reality, a void filled with emotional neglect, icy detachment, and the slow poison of Adrian's cruelty. Within the gleaming walls of our luxurious home, a far different story played out. One known only to me and to a lesser extent, Clara. Adrian's charm was a mask, one he shed in private to reveal a man who wielded words like weapons. His insults, often cloaked in the guise of humor, cut deeply, leaving wounds that lingered long after the forced laughter faded. He dismissed my thoughts and opinions, treating me not as an equal, but as a decorative appendage, a trophy to display at galas and dinners. Then there was his double life, a truth I had suspected for years, but tried to bury beneath the overwhelming weight of my responsibilities as a mother and a wife. Late nights at the office, explained away as urgent business, were a flimsy cover for his affairs. I knew another woman was involved, my intuition sharpened by the lingering scent of unfamiliar perfume on his bespoke suits and the fleeting conspiratorial glances he shared with certain women at social events. Adrian belittled my passions, my love for Renaissance art, my quiet dreams of curating a small, exclusive gallery, dismissing them as trivial, unworthy of his attention. With surgical precision, he made me feel small, insignificant, a shadow of the vibrant woman I once was. In the early days of our marriage, Adrian had been different. He'd flirted with me at a charity auction, captivated, he said, by my unconventional mind and enigmatic smile. I was then in my mid-20s, freshly graduated from Columbia with a double major in art history and computer science, quietly mourning the loss of my first love, Michael. Michael, Clara's biological father, had been a brilliant, idealistic software engineer, taken too soon by a freak accident. His sudden death had left me reeling, adrift in a world that felt suddenly too big and too cold. Adrian, with his overwhelming charisma and promise of stability, seemed like a lifeline. He promised to shield me from the harsh realities, to provide a life of ease for Clara and me. I, still raw with grief and burdened by the responsibility of single motherhood, succumbed to his charm. I married him, convinced it was the best, safest choice for Clara. I was not just a neglected wife, however. Before Adrian, before even Michael, my first love and Clara's biological father, who died tragically young, I was a prodigy. A computer science whiz who also possessed a deep, intuitive understanding of art history and market dynamics. I had briefly attended MIT, dropping out after Michael's death, but not before soaking up invaluable knowledge about data analytics, cybersecurity, and the dark web. While Adrian built his visible empire of glass and steel, I was quietly, meticulously, constructing my own, far more formidable one in the digital shadows. My profession, publicly, was that of a freelance art appraiser, a respectable, if somewhat understated, role that allowed me access to exclusive circles and priceless collections. This was my cover. In truth, I ran Aura Analytics, a clandestine, highly specialized data forensics and intelligence firm. We didn't deal in traditional crime. We dealt in financial malfeasance, corporate espionage, and uncovering the hidden skeletons in the closets of the ultra-rich. My clients were discreet, powerful individuals who preferred surgical precision over public scandal. My tools were not blueprints and contracts, but algorithms, encrypted networks, and an unparalleled ability to piece together fragmented data into damning narratives. Adrian, blinded by his own ego and the spotlight of his public success, had never once suspected the true depth of my capabilities. He saw my art appraisals as a quaint hobby, a way for me to feel productive while he handled the real money. He never knew that for years, I had been systematically collecting, analyzing, and archiving every single one of his transgressions. The video on the screen, meticulously compiled, began with an almost innocuous montage. Adrian at various charity events, laughing with other women, his hand lingering just a fraction too long on their lower backs. Then, the dates and locations appeared, stark white text on a black screen. Seamlessly, the montage transitioned to blurred but undeniable footage from hidden cameras. Adrian entering a discreet townhouse in the West Village, with a woman I recognized as his head of public relations, Celeste Dubois. Adrian sharing intimate dinners in private rooms. Adrian holding hands. Adrian kissing. Adrian on romantic getaways captured by discreet drones my team had deployed. It wasn't just one affair. It was a carefully documented timeline of multiple, overlapping liaisons, each one a betrayal, each one a testament to his pathological deceit. The room was silent, save for a few choked gasps. Adrian's face was now ashen. Chloe, his perpetually haughty sister, who had always viewed me as an inferior, gasped loudly, covering her mouth with a manicured hand. The video paused on a screenshot, a discreet text message from Adrian to Celeste, dated just 2 weeks ago, confirming plans for a private celebration the very next night, our anniversary. Then, the final devastating segment began. This was not about his infidelities. This was about his financial transgressions. My team at Aura Analytics had spent months meticulously unearthing Adrian's darkest secrets. He wasn't just a philanderer. He was a financial predator. The video shifted, displaying complex flowcharts of shell corporations, offshore accounts, and highly dubious transactions. It showed his pattern of leveraging insider information for personal gain, funneling client funds into his own ventures, and, most damningly, a series of illicit payments to key officials to fast-track permits and approvals for his most lucrative developments. There were authenticated audio recordings of him bribing city planners, intimidating competitors, and manipulating market values. Each transaction, each call, each whispered confession was meticulously laid out, irrefutable and damning. The crescendo arrived with a series of documents projected onto the screen, forged signatures on land deeds, doctored financial statements presented to investors, and a damning email chain revealing his deliberate overestimation of development costs to siphon off millions into a private slush fund. This fund, the video revealed, was not just for his mistresses. It was the true source of his extravagant lifestyle, masking a far less stable financial foundation for his legitimate businesses. His real estate empire, outwardly glittering, was a house of cards built on fraud and corruption. The final image on the screen was a single line of text, bold and red, forging a path to prison. Adrian Thorne's secret empire of deceit. The ballroom erupted. Whispers turned into shouts. Reporters, subtly invited by my contacts, scrambled for their cameras. Adrian stood frozen, his eyes fixed on the screen, a man staring into his own personal abyss. His carefully constructed world, built on lies and arrogance, had just imploded live before his entire social and professional circle. I took a deep, steadying breath. My hand slipped from his, leaving his clammy palm suddenly empty. He barely noticed. I walked to the microphone, the emerald silk of my dress rustling softly, the only sound apart from the growing cacophony. Adrian's toast was illuminating, I said, my voice clear and calm, cutting through the chaos. He said I was repulsive. Perhaps he confused me with his own reflection, because what you have just witnessed is the true face of Adrian Thorne. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. For years, I built a life with this man, believing in the facade of his success, enduring his cruelty for the sake of our daughter, Clara. I kept silent, I endured. But there comes a point when silence becomes complicity, and my complicity ends tonight. I held up a single sheet of paper, crisp and white. It wasn't a legal document, it was a court order. This, I announced, my voice gaining strength, is an emergency freeze order, obtained just hours ago, on all of Adrian Thorne's personal and corporate assets, effective immediately. And this, I added, holding up a second, even more damning document, is a copy of the criminal indictment filed against Adrian Thorne and several of his key associates by the district attorney's office for widespread financial fraud, racketeering, and bribery. Gasps, louder this time, reverberated through the hall. Adrian finally broke free of his stupor. "Lucy, you conniving," he started, lunging towards me. But before he could reach me, two stern-faced men in dark suits, who had been discreetly blending into the crowd, stepped forward. They were federal agents. Adrian Thorne, one of them stated, his voice devoid of emotion, "You're under arrest." Adrian, still reeling, offered no resistance. He was too stunned. As he was led away in handcuffs, his carefully tailored suit suddenly looked ill-fitting, his expensive watch a mockery. His eyes found mine, filled with a mixture of hatred, disbelief, and a flicker of fear. I simply met his gaze, my smirk intact. This wasn't about revenge, it was about justice and liberation. In the ensuing days, the fallout was catastrophic. Adrian's arrest was front-page news, dominating every major financial and gossip publication. Sterling Thorne Properties, once an untouchable titan, crumbled with astonishing speed. The company's board, desperate to distance themselves, immediately suspended Adrian and launched an internal investigation. Lawsuits from defrauded investors piled up. The real estate market, already wary of his aggressive tactics, recoiled. His personal assets were frozen, his reputation irrevocably shattered. Chloe and Noah, Adrian's children from a previous relationship, who had always reveled in their father's lavish lifestyle, found themselves adrift in a sea of scandal. Their credit cards were frozen, their trust funds tangled in legal battles. They became pariahs in the very social circles they had once effortlessly dominated. I heard through the grapevine that Chloe, unable to cope with a sudden loss of status, had a very public meltdown at a high-end boutique, screaming about my mother's revenge. It was pathetic. Clara, my daughter, was a different story. The initial shock gave way to a storm of emotions: anger, confusion, and finally, a profound sadness. She had been living in a golden cage, and now the bars had melted away, leaving her exposed to a reality she had never truly understood. She saw the news reports, read the scathing articles, heard the whispers. She saw Adrian, her perfect stepdad, for the manipulative fraud he truly was. A week later, she came to my downtown gallery, Aura and Artifacts, a small, elegant space I had quietly opened months ago to display my private collection and host intimate art appraisal consultations. This was the public face of Aura Analytics, a beautiful, tranquil space where art could be appreciated and data could be discreetly exchanged. She walked through the hushed rooms, past the centuries-old tapestries and the contemporary sculptures, her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed. "Mom," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you stop him sooner?" I led her to a quiet alcove, where a worn velvet armchair sat beside a small antique desk. "Clara," I said. Using her formal name, I tried. "For years I tried to make your father see, to make him change. But he was blinded by his own ambition. And I tried to protect you, from his darkness, from the truth of what he was. But in doing so, I kept you in the dark too." I explained everything. Michael's small but shrewd investments, my early tech background, the gradual growth of Aura Analytics. I wanted to teach you that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts, but in integrity, resilience, and the courage to stand for what's right. I wanted you to see that the quiet strength you saw in me, the one your father dismissed, was in fact my greatest power. I built this empire, not for show, but to protect myself, and to ensure that when the time came, I had the means to fight back and secure our future. Clara listened, tears silently tracking paths down her cheeks. "I was so stupid," she finally choked out. "I believed him. I believed all of it. He made me feel ashamed of us, of our life before him, of you." I pulled her into my arms, holding her tightly as she sobbed. "You were not stupid, sweetheart. You were a child, and you wanted to be loved, to belong. He manipulated that. He preyed on our vulnerabilities, and I take responsibility for allowing it to go on for as long as it did." Over the next few months, Clara began an arduous journey of healing and self-discovery. She enrolled in a summer program at NYU, not for business or finance, but for art history, a field she had dismissed years ago under Adrian's influence. She spent her evenings at my gallery, asking questions, truly listening, soaking in the knowledge about art, about business, about the delicate balance between beauty and truth. She witnessed firsthand how Aura Analytics discreetly but powerfully operated, seeing me navigate complex data, advise high-stakes clients, and rebuild a life of genuine influence far beyond the superficial glitter of Adrian's world. She started volunteering at a local youth art program I funded, teaching kids about art history and creative expression. Slowly, painfully, she began to shed the polished, artificial persona she had adopted. The laughter returned to her eyes, genuine and unforced. The self-doubt began to recede, replaced by a quiet confidence born of authentic growth. Adrian, I heard through the grapevine, had been denied bail. His case was slowly moving through the courts, a drawn-out, messy process that would likely result in a lengthy prison sentence. His once loyal associates, implicated in his schemes, were turning on him, eager to cut plea deals. The empire he had so arrogantly built was in ruins, its foundations exposed as rotten to the core. One crisp autumn evening, Claire and I sat on the terrace of my Tribeca penthouse, the city lights twinkling like fallen stars below. She was sketching in a notebook a scene of the bustling street below, her artistic talent, long suppressed, finally blooming. "Mom," she said, without looking up, Do you think he ever really loved you?" I gazed at the vibrant cityscape, a testament to endless possibilities. "I think, Clara, he loved what he thought I could give him. A beautiful wife, a perfect family facade, a quiet presence that wouldn't challenge his grand illusions. He loved the idea of controlling something he couldn't quite understand. But love, true love, doesn't disgust. It elevates, it respects, it empowers." She closed her sketchbook, turning to face me. "And what about us? Are we okay?" I smiled. A genuine, heartfelt smile this time. "We're more than okay, sweetheart. We're free. Free from the lies. Free from the manipulation. Free to be our true selves." This was never just about bringing down Adrian. It was about rebuilding. Rebuilding our lives, rebuilding our trust, rebuilding our own sense of worth. Not based on someone else's approval or bank account, but on our own integrity. The journey to liberation isn't always a straight path. It's messy, it's painful, and sometimes it requires you to set fire to the very world you thought you needed. But in the ashes, if you are brave enough to sift through them, you will find the seeds of something truly extraordinary. You will find the strength you never knew you possessed, the truth you always suspected, and a freedom that no amount of money or outward perfection can ever buy. For years, I allowed myself to be diminished, to be unseen, to be called repulsive by a man who couldn't see past his own reflection. But my silent strength was never weakness. It was a carefully cultivated power, waiting for the precise moment to strike. It was the resilience forged in fire, the wisdom gleaned from neglect, the quiet determination that built an empire not for show, but for true impact. So, if you find yourself in a situation where someone tries to belittle you, to make you feel small, to erase your worth, remember this: true power doesn't shout. It doesn't dominate. It quietly builds, meticulously plans, and then, at the precise moment, it reveals itself, shattering illusions and reclaiming its rightful place. Never let anyone define your worth. Your true value lies not in what others perceive you to be, but in the unwavering integrity of who you are. And sometimes, the most exquisite revenge is simply living your truth, loudly and unapologetically, for all the world to see. The aftermath of the anniversary reveal, Adrian Thorne's very public downfall, extended far beyond the sensational headlines and the hushed whispers of Manhattan's elite. It was a ripple effect, a seismic shift that recalibrated not just my life and Clara's, but the very fabric of the society we inhabited. Adrian's arrest, captured on grainy phone footage that went viral within minutes of the anniversary party, was only the beginning. His initial denial was swift and vehement, a desperate attempt to leverage his rapidly dwindling influence. He declared it a malicious personal attack orchestrated by a disgruntled ex-wife, a narrative his remaining PR team tried to push. But the meticulously compiled evidence, the financial records, the audio and video recordings, the testimony of his now cooperating former associates, all compiled by Aura Analytics, were too damning. The district attorney's office, armed with my comprehensive dossier, moved with chilling efficiency. Adrian's bail was set astronomically high, and his lawyers, sensing the impossibility of the situation, advised him to cooperate, to try and mitigate the inevitable. But Adrian, arrogant to the core, refused. He still believed he could charm his way out, that his wealth and connections would somehow conjure a miracle. He was wrong. His sister Chloe, once a formidable presence at every high society event, found herself isolated. Her credit cards, tied to Adrian's frozen assets, were declined. Her trust funds, heavily invested in Sterling Thorne properties, evaporated as the company's stock plummeted to zero. She was seen selling her designer handbags on consignment, desperately trying to maintain some semblance of her former life. Her phone calls to Adrian's lawyers, demanding he fix this, went unanswered. The socialites who once fawned over her now crossed the street to avoid her. She was a tragicomic figure, a living embodiment of superficiality stripped bare. Clara, meanwhile, navigated this treacherous new landscape with a quiet grace that astonished me. The initial anger and sadness had matured into a profound sense of clarity. She saw the true cost of Adrian's ambition, the emotional and financial wreckage he left in his wake. She began to actively seek out stories of people who had built success on integrity, not deception. Her interest in art history deepened, but it was no longer a superficial pursuit. She saw art as a reflection of truth, a powerful medium for expression and genuine connection, a stark contrast to the hollow materialism of Adrian's world. She spent more time at Aura and Artifacts, my gallery. It became her sanctuary. She'd help me organize new acquisitions, research artists, and even sit in on some of my more benign appraisal consultations. She observed how I interacted with clients, with respect, honesty, and an unwavering commitment to truth, even when it meant delivering uncomfortable appraisals. She saw that true power wasn't about shouting the loudest or dominating a room. It was about quiet competence, unwavering integrity, and the ability to see through deception. "Mom," she said one afternoon, as we were cataloging a new collection of contemporary photographs, "I used to think being rich meant you could do anything, say anything, and no one could touch you. Adrian, he really believed that, didn't he?" "He did," I confirmed, carefully handling a framed print. "He conflated power with impunity. But true power is accountability, Clara. It's knowing that your actions have consequences and choosing to act with honor even when no one is watching." Her gaze lingered on a photograph of a desolate, abandoned urban landscape. "I want to be different," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "I want to build something real, something that helps people, not just makes money." This was a turning point. Clara, who had once been so enamored with Adrian's glittering world, was now actively seeking a path of purpose and authenticity. I encouraged her, not with lavish gifts or empty promises, but with guidance, mentorship, and the unwavering belief in her burgeoning potential. I decided to take a small risk, one that would solidify Aura Analytics' reputation, and also serve as a quiet statement of my values. I invested a significant portion of my recovered assets into a new venture, the Thorn Reclaimed Project. It was a foundation dedicated to converting some of Adrian's seized, dilapidated properties into affordable housing and community art spaces. The irony was delicious. Adrian's legacy, meant to be one of greed and exploitation, would now, under my guidance, become one of community revitalization and artistic expression. The press, still captivated by the Thorn scandal, covered it extensively, often contrasting Adrian's destructive practices with my quiet, impactful philanthropy. It was a subtle, yet powerful narrative shift. Adrian, from behind prison bars, still tried to exert control. His lawyers, now a new, less reputable set, filed endless appeals, frivolous lawsuits against me, accusing me of defamation and malicious prosecution. Each one was swiftly dismissed. He even tried to reach Clara, sending her rambling, self-pitying letters, attempting to paint himself as the victim. Clara, with newfound maturity, forwarded them all to me, her eyes hardened with a resolve I had never seen before. We collectively decided to cut off all contact. The emotional manipulation had to end. I also leveraged my newfound public profile, albeit carefully, to expand Aura Analytics. The exposure from the Adrian Thorn case, while personally painful, had inadvertently served as the ultimate proof of concept for my firm. Discreet inquiries poured in from high-net-worth individuals, corporations, and even a few government agencies, all seeking my specialized data forensics services. They wanted to uncover hidden malfeasance, protect their assets, and ensure their own integrity wasn't compromised by shady dealings. Aura Analytics grew, not into a sprawling corporate behemoth, but into a highly efficient boutique firm known for its discretion, its precision, and its unwavering commitment to truth. We became the silent guardians of integrity in a world often blinded by superficiality. My life, once defined by Adrian's presence and my reaction to his cruelty, began to flourish in ways I hadn't imagined. My art collection expanded, reflecting my true passions. I hosted small, intimate gatherings at my gallery, bringing together artists, philanthropists, and tech innovators, people who valued substance over show. The penthouse, once a symbol of Adrian's opulence, was slowly transformed into a space that truly reflected me. Minimalist, filled with light, and adorned with art that resonated with my soul. It was a home, not a trophy. Clara thrived. She blossomed into a thoughtful, compassionate young woman. Her art program at NYU was going brilliantly, and she was already talking about graduate studies, perhaps even pursuing a career in art restoration. A meticulous, detail-oriented field that perfectly suited her growing precision and love for uncovering hidden beauty. We cooked together, laughed together, and, most importantly, talked openly and honestly about everything. The scars from Adrian's betrayal would always be there, a faint etching on our shared history, but they no longer defined us. They were reminders of how far we had come, how much we had overcome. One evening, nearly 2 years after Adrian's arrest, the news flashed across my tablet. Adrian Thorne had been sentenced. 25 years in federal prison without parole. His appeals had been exhausted, his last desperate attempts to cling to his former life extinguished. There was no joy in my heart, no sense of triumph, only a quiet finality. The chapter was closed. Clara, who was sitting beside me, saw the headline. She simply leaned her head on my shoulder. "It's finally over, Mom," she whispered. "No, sweetheart," I corrected gently. "It's just beginning. His chapter is over. Ours is just truly starting." The journey to liberation isn't always a straight path. It's messy, it's painful, and sometimes it requires you to set fire to the very world you thought you needed. But in the ashes, if you are brave enough to sift through them, you will find the seeds of something truly extraordinary. You will find the strength you never knew you possessed, the truth you always suspected, and a freedom that no amount of money or outward perfection can ever buy. For years, I allowed myself to be diminished, to be unseen, to be called repulsive by a man who couldn't see past his own reflection. But my silent strength was never weakness. It was a carefully cultivated power, waiting for the precise moment to strike. It was the resilience forged in fire, the wisdom gleaned from neglect, the quiet determination that built an empire not for show, but for true impact. So, if you find yourself in a situation where someone tries to belittle you, to make you feel small, to erase your worth, remember this: true power doesn't shout. It doesn't dominate. It quietly builds, meticulously plans, and then, at the precise moment, it reveals itself, shattering illusions and reclaiming its rightful place. Never let anyone define your worth. Your true value lies not in what others perceive you to be, but in the unwavering integrity of who you are. And sometimes, the most exquisite revenge is simply living your truth, loudly and unapologetically, for all the world to see. The quiet hum of the city was my lullaby now, a symphony of purpose and growth. Adrian Thorne, a name once synonymous with Manhattan's glittering skyline, had become a cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms, a footnote in legal textbooks. His empire, built on a foundation of lies, had crumbled into dust, meticulously swept away by the precise, unwavering hand of justice. But for me, Lucy Hayes, and my daughter Clara, the ending of his story was merely the powerful beginning of ours. After the dust settled from the initial media frenzy, a new kind of calm enveloped our lives. Adrian's legal team, despite their best efforts, found no leverage. The evidence gathered by Aura Analytics was too airtight, too meticulously documented. Every lie, every bribe, every illicit transaction had a digital fingerprint, a timestamp, a verifiable source. The criminal trial was swift and brutal, a public dissection of Adrian's depravity. His attempts to smear my name, to paint me as a vindictive ex-wife backfired spectacularly. My quiet dignity, my factual disclosures to the authorities, and the undeniable truth of the evidence stood in stark contrast to his increasingly desperate and erratic behavior. He was sentenced to 25 years in a federal penitentiary, a fate his arrogant ego had never conceived possible. His fall from grace was absolute. Chloe and Noah, Adrian's children, vanished from the public eye. Without their father's immense wealth and influence, they were left with nothing but a mountain of debt and a fractured reputation. The exclusive social circles that had once embraced them now actively shunned them. I heard snippets of their struggles. Chloe working a meager job, Noah attempting to start a small business that quickly failed. There was no joy in their misfortune for me, only a quiet understanding of the consequences of entitlement and complicity. They had chosen to align themselves with Adrian's values, and now they reaped the bitter harvest. Clara, however, blossomed. The exposure to Adrian's true nature had been a painful crucible, but it had refined her, stripping away the superficial desires he had instilled. She embraced her studies at NYU with a fervent passion, her once sporadic interest in art history, now a deep intellectual pursuit. She found solace and purpose in the meticulous process of art restoration, learning to mend fractured canvases and restore faded pigments, a symbolic reflection of her own healing journey. She joined me often at Aura and Artifacts, not as an obligation, but out of genuine curiosity and a growing desire to understand the intricacies of my world. "Mom," she asked one evening, as we sat surrounded by rare manuscripts in the gallery's quiet archives, "how did you learn all this? The tech, the finance, it's so different from what you showed the world." I smiled, remembering my younger self, hunched over a glowing screen in a dingy dorm room, a world away from the gilded cages of Adrian's making. After Michael died, and I was suddenly a young mother, I realized how vulnerable I was, how vulnerable we both were. I had no safety net, no family to fall back on. I knew I needed to build my own. My computer science background, my fascination with art markets, they weren't just hobbies, they were tools. Tools to understand power, to find leverage, to create a shield for us. I explained how, over the years, while Adrian was busy building his visible empire, I was quietly building my own, far more resilient one in the shadows. Aura Analytics started as a small clandestine operation, initially just me and a network of trusted, like-minded individuals, ex-federal agents, brilliant data scientists, disillusioned forensic accountants. We took on a handful of cases, operating with extreme discretion, meticulously building our reputation, one perfectly executed, utterly silent investigation at a time. The profits, substantial and untraceable, were reinvested, diversified, creating layers of financial security that Adrian, with all his supposed financial acumen, never once detected. He never looked for money in the places I hid it, not in shell companies, but in the nuanced data of the art market, in the dark web's hidden networks, in the quiet, almost invisible flow of information. The Thorn Reclaimed project became a beacon of our new path. The public loved the narrative. The corrupt mogul's assets, once symbols of his greed, transformed into spaces of hope and community. We repurposed one of his seized, unfinished luxury condo towers in a rapidly gentrifying neighborhood of Brooklyn into a vibrant mixed-use development. The lower floors became affordable housing units, providing safe, dignified homes for families displaced by rising rents. The middle floors were converted into community hubs, a free public library, a subsidized daycare center, and a series of affordable artist studios. The top floors were leased as upscale, but reasonably priced, co-working spaces, the profits from which funded the project's ongoing maintenance and expansion. Clara took a personal interest in the art studios, curating an open call for emerging local artists and organizing free workshops for children. She found a deep sense of fulfillment in fostering creativity, in creating spaces where talent could flourish, unburdened by financial constraints. It was the antithesis of Adrian's world, a world where art was a commodity, a status symbol, not a source of joy or community. Our relationship, once strained by Adrian's insidious influence, was now unbreakable. We were more than mother and daughter. We were partners, confidants, and friends. We took a long, overdue trip to Italy, exploring Florence's Uffizi Gallery, wandering through the quiet streets of Siena, and indulging in long, leisurely meals, savoring not just the food, but each other's company. Clara, with her sketchbook always in hand, captured the world with a fresh, discerning eye, her art reflecting a newfound depth and authenticity. My life had become a tapestry woven with purpose. Aura analytics continued to flourish, taking on complex cases that exposed corruption and brought quiet justice. I used my growing influence to fund art education programs in underserved communities, to support independent artists, and to champion initiatives that fostered genuine connection and creativity. The memory of Adrian's cruel words, "You've disgusted me since day one," still lingered, a phantom echo from a past life. But they no longer held power over me. They were a reminder of how far I had come, of the strength I had unearthed in the face of adversity. True power, I had learned, wasn't about dominating others. It wasn't about accumulating wealth for its own sake, or building a public facade of success. True power was self-knowledge. It was the quiet confidence that comes from knowing who you are, what you stand for, and what you are capable of, even when the world tries to diminish you. It was the courage to confront unpleasant truths, to dismantle the lies, and to rebuild on a foundation of authenticity and integrity. It was about understanding that while the scars of betrayal might never fully fade, they could be transformed into a source of resilience, a roadmap for a better future. It was about choosing to live a life that genuinely reflected your values, not someone else's expectations. And it was about embracing the profound freedom that comes from being truly, unapologetically yourself. My journey had been long, fraught with silent battles and hidden sorrows. But standing now, on the precipice of a future I had built with my own hands, surrounded by the art I loved and the daughter I cherished, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I was not repulsive. I was powerful. I was free. And for the first time, I was truly, irrevocably happy.